Hi everyone, I'm Darby. In my first speech, I told you all about why I'm a student at the University of Mount Olive. I'm majoring in agribusiness. That's why I thought it would be appropriate to do my instructive speech on how to start a raised garden bed. First, I will tell you about why I love to garden. Yes, I live right in the middle of the city of Wilmington, which is a pretty big city now, so it's not very common for people to have gardens in their backyards here, as it is in other places. When people ask me about my hobbies, and I reply so passionately about my garden, I sometimes get responses back in forms of shaking of the head or chuckles. People just don't get it. For me, gardening is freedom. Granted, I'm not to the point of complete freedom yet, but there's no better feeling knowing that if I need an ingredient for a recipe, that I can step right into my backyard and pick it straight from the plant rather than having to go to the grocery store. I have the benefit of knowing exactly where my food came from, what it's been exposed to, and how much work went into making it. That helps you to appreciate it that much more. Gardening is an outlet for creativity, and honestly, who doesn't like to see the fruits and the veggies of their hard labor? One major mistake that people make when it comes to gardening is thinking that they have to have a lot of land or a bunch of fancy tools to be successful. This is completely untrue. I grow my garden in an 8x10 raised garden bed. I can reap the benefits from this anywhere from 5 months to 9 months out of the year. There are a ton of benefits from raised garden beds. They provide the best drainage, which helps to prevent soil compaction. The soil in a raised garden bed also warms up very quickly in the spring, which lengthens the growing season. And because the garden is contained, there are less chances of weeds taking over, which also provides as a barrier for common garden pests such as slugs or snails. After determining the size and the location of your raised garden bed, the next step is to prepare the soil. When working with soil, it is important to determine the pH. There are kits out there available to help you do this. If the soil is too acidic or has a low pH, you can sweeten it by adding lime. If the soil has a high alkalinity or a high pH, you can regulate that by adding heavy organic material or mulching in something acidic such as pine needles. It's also necessary to monitor the moisture level in your soil. Before planting, your soil should be dry. It should be crumbly and not clumpy. When you get all of the previous steps down, it's time to enrich your soil with organic matter. I use a combination of vermicompost and manure. After I've mulched all of this together, I level the soil out and I rake it smooth. Though it seems like a lot of work, most of the soil preparation only has to be done one time. The next step to starting your garden is deciding what you're going to grow. The best tip that I can give you for this is to do a lot of research and find out what grows best in your area. During the summer, I stick to the basics mainly because my garden is so small. I grow a variety of tomatoes and peppers, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, and okra. In the fall, I stick to squash, lettuce, snap beans, and collards. These crops require very little maintenance. The first one is understanding a garden's chemical needs. This means maintaining healthy levels of phosphate, nitrogen, and potassium. Next is understanding when and how much to water. This really depends on what kind of plants you're planting, but it's always ideal to water in the morning, which aids in less water evaporation. After that is weeding. It's always best to weed your plants before the weed is mature enough to rip the seeds from the plant. Next is mulching. When your plants grow high enough, a blanket of mulch is added to the top of it. This helps in water conservation and reduces the amount of weeds that are able to grow. Mulch is not added into the soil, but lays like a blanket on top of it. Eventually, the mulch will compost down and add nutrients to your plant, so it's important to maintain levels of this by adding it to the top every now and then. When maintaining a garden, you should stick to using organic fertilizer and rotating your crops every year. It should take 3 years for each crop to make it back to its original plot. Finally, enjoy your bounty. There's nothing better than walking out to your garden in the middle of summer and picking a cherry tomato for a mid-afternoon snack. Thank you for listening and happy gardening!